Friday afternoon is here, and you know what that means. It is time for a new episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd, always joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr., talk about everything going on in the world of mixed martial arts. And, of course, you know we're here to talk about tomorrow's UFC fight card, as Pete tomorrow starts a run of 11 straight weeks of UFC events. The next time we don't have a UFC event, 420.
Oh, damn. Yeah, I'm excited. I really like it, you know, when we go on these aggressive stretches of fights, you know, and we complain about, you know, the level of skill from card to card, but at least we do have fights. So, you know, it's fine, and it's a strategic absence from the promotion, from the holidays, past the new year a little bit, and then they start ramping up as the year goes on. So I'm here for it. I'm here for fights every weekend.
Hey, man. Renato Moicano, he might be my favorite fighter at this point. Did you hear his quotes this week?
Oh, about the 8? Yeah.
This was his quote. "This is a fight night. No one gives a shit about fight night, so it doesn't matter if it's a co-main event, main event, or prelims. Who gives a fuck, bro? It's just a cheap way to put on UFC on ESPN. So, hey, Dana White, I'd rather be on UFC 299, but I don't make the rules. I'm an employee, and on February 3rd, I will beat Drew Dober. It doesn't matter if it's in the Apex. Another thing is, no one likes the Apex, my brother. You can ask anybody in the world. The fans hate the Apex, and the fighters, I'm pretty sure they don't like the Apex too. The UFC has so many fighters right now, they have to make so much fights that it makes sense. Apex, ESPN, but if you ask me, I'd be happy to fight in the Apex. No way, brother. No way." And then he ends with this: "If you like me, that's okay. But if you don't like me, fuck you, and I don't care."
I love Moicano.
How are you not a Renato Moicano fan?
I've been a Renato Moicano fan since he stepped up on short notice against Rafael dos Anjos, and even prior to that he was a prospect that we had high hopes for, and then his chin just hasn't necessarily checked out in some matchups, but he's great on the mic, and him being excellent on the mic has carried over into the podcast world, and now you see it. The media is starting to get behind him, and I like it. I like Renato Moicano a lot, and especially because he's outspoken, and his English is great. I love it.
Yeah, man. When I saw those quotes earlier this week, I'm like, Renato Moicano, you have literally gone to the top of the ladder, my favorite fighter, just because you are out here just speaking the truth. Of course, as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode. Of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. That really does help us out a lot. Of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when we are here live on the channel. Typically, we're here on Fridays, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Sometimes that might be on a Thursday based on myself and Pete's schedule. Of course, if you got any questions, you can line those up in the chats. If you send us a super chat, your question will go to the top queue. Of course, also you can join our Discord channel, totally free to join. Great conversation in there. One of the things that we did, at least I should say I did this week, is this was actually a suggestion from a listener about wanting to have the standings for the Fight HQ contest over on DraftKings. And right now, Spencer SPN is the leader in the pack, as he's got 1,100 points through 2 weeks. Sledge Daddy is in third, and Ipe Eldal is in third, and I'm in fourth. Where I guess there's Pete in 13th place.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. You make this leaderboard, and my aggressive lineups in our tournament are totally not working out. But hey, it's all right. It is nice to see the community in there. See who's killing it. I still say that Jason and I are at a significant disadvantage in that tournament. So that's why I have to try to get super, super different. But no, it's really cool. I don't care about the leaderboard at all. I love seeing the fact that you guys are, week in and week out joining the Fight HQ contest. Bantering back and forth through the Discord channel, which is free to join in the description below. And it's just nice. It's nice to see where everybody's head's at. And hopefully on some of these weeks when you guys are crushing it in the Fight HQ contest, that you're putting those same lineups in the GPPs. Because I'll tell you what, they're pretty sharp from week in and week out.
Yeah, I'm trying to take down some GPPs, as I've had to spend a little bit of money this week, so trying to recoup some of that money and hopefully take down some GPPs. Did some mass entries in there yesterday, and I haven't really put together, outside of I put an initial lineup together for the Fight HQ contest. I haven't put together my multi-entries. I always like to hear what Pete's thoughts are on some of these fights, which underdogs that he's looking at, and see what disagreements that we potentially have. and I mentioned about this, that the leaderboard came from a comment here on YouTube. Someone was asking about that. And so we always love to hear comments. And one of the things I want to know from our listener base is, as sports betting has become more legalized throughout the United States, I just wonder, have you found yourself playing more in the sports book than DFS, or has it not changed? That's what I would really be interested to know from our listeners, of how where you take your sports entertainment money. Is it mostly DFS? Is it mostly gambling? Is it 50-50, or is there one or the other that you spend a little bit more money on?
Yeah, I think so. I'm probably, going to speak on how a lot of people are starting to feel. Is I got into all this because of DFS. You see the great prize pools from all sports, and it's very difficult to make 5-6 figures off of betting, on one card alone. But if you have the correct GPP lineup, you can take down $100,000. You can take down $50,000. So that is really, really enticing. And it's essentially a lottery ticket that we are watching unfold, each and every week with the UFC cards. And it's fun. It is fun. I do think that the community has gotten a lot sharper as more data has come out, of course, whereas it's becoming more of a hardcore and less casual type of event. I will say that consistently, and if I'm trying to be smart, I'm leaning more towards the betting standpoint, just from how to increase my bankroll. Whereas DFS, I'm viewing as that home run. I'm going up there and I'm swinging for the fences. And it is nice, and it's amazing when you take down a GPP. I haven't been able to take down a big GPP for MMA, oddly enough, but I'm hoping it's coming, and I still really love DFS. I hope that the sport, DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports, doesn't start dying out, but I don't blame people if they're just going to resort to betting. I think it's a much easier way to get involved. It's a more casual type of way to live bet sometimes. You see how people are. It's fun, right? And you don't have to have crazy amounts of lineups and go through a crazy process to bet necessarily. Yeah. Whereas for DFS, you have to be pretty thorough.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things. It was just something I thought of earlier this week, and kind of as I think I've seen a lot of changes in DFS over the past couple of months, and it's just something that I thought of, and it was one of those things of like, and I mentioned this to Pete earlier this week. I was like, I really just want to know what our listeners think about this, and obviously maybe if you're in a state that doesn't have sports betting, maybe DFS is a way to go. But Pete, you bring up a really great point. You want to sit there and make $100,000 one night gambling. You better have a huge ass bankroll, or you better just like go hit that lottery ticket with that 14-leg parlay.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So like, you have to be a little bit aggressive from a betting standpoint of, prop. Like imagine like when I'm putting these awesome props in our Discord channel, which is free to join, and I hit that, what was it? 4,000 to 1, round 3 submission from, I forget what the hell the guy's name was. But he hit. And I put like super small money. I put like $5. But imagine like if you were aggressive and you put more than that. I mean, that's the way to make crazy money when it comes to betting. Or if you just try to get all the fights correctly, as like, some other podcasts do, and like Cody Safdie and Paul Shaughnessy with the PRP, like that's really difficult to do. And credit to them when they nail that thing, because trying to get every fight or almost all the fights correctly is a very difficult task.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I always talk about, towards the end of the show, I talk about sprinkles, when we're talking about props. And, maybe if you like a certain fighter and you think they're going to win by submission or knockout, and maybe you think their opponent is going to gas, maybe you look at a round 3 type prop where you may get 20 to 1 type odds. But yeah, that's one of those things of, and of course we all know how the industry goes. No one loves to bet unders and overs, wherever the sport may be. But we'll see how this one goes. Now let's move into game theory, P, as we talk about UFC Vegas 85 here. Of course, Imavov and Dolidze is our main event, 86 and 7,600 both there in terms of DraftKings. But like, this is one of those weeks where I look at all these 9,000 options, and like, I would not say I'm absolutely in love with these 9,000 options in terms of fantasy score upside. Like Natalie Silva at 9,500, it's a huge price tag for a huge step up in competition based on who she's been facing. Of course, Viviane Araujo been fighting the top of this division. I look at someone like a Molly McCann at 9,300. I think there is some legitimate concerns of where she's at this point in her career. I mean, I would say probably the 9,000 option I might feel the most comfortable with is Gorimbo.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think that when you put confidence next to some of these 9,000 options, Natalia Silva jumps off the page. Like I'm really confident in her going forward against almost everybody within the division. I understand it's a tough task against Viviane Araujo. Big step up of competition, but she is older. She is slower, and she does fade as the fight goes on. Can she pay off that hefty price tag? I don't necessarily think so, right? Like, she'd have to either get her out of there quickly or put together ridiculous volume. Definitely possible. I would probably say that Molly McCann is one of my least favorites just because of the uncertainties that, are included when with her coming off back-to-back defeats. Her fight IQ at times is questionable at best. Now she's trying to dip her toe into the 115-pound weight class. I don't like this, Jason, and you know that I say this all the time, is when I see these fighters trying to go down rather than go up as their careers go on. It reminds me like how Frankie Edgar used to dominate at 155, then started talking about going to 45, and then possibly 135. So it's like searching for answers to reclaim that dominance or reclaim that form, and I just don't necessarily see it. I mean, we did see Belbita score decently well, 5+ years ago, and when they first fight, or however long it was. I like Randy Brown's skill set, but his finishing skills, despite what his records say, he's been very patient at times, and he's volatile. So 9,100, he's okay. It comes down to two grapplers for me, and that's Gorimbo and Urbina, kind of like 1A and 1B. Urbina has been super volatile at times, but man, that pace that he puts on, and Gorimbo's wrestling, at least I know whether this guy's going to get knocked out. I don't care. He goes out there and he knows he needs to lace up those wrestling shoes each and every fight. And that's something that I can count on, is him having the wrestling and going to it, whereas some of these guys that have the wrestling are just gun shy about pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I look at Pete Rodriguez this week. I mean, you want to talk about puncher's chance. I mean, that's where it is. But I think if Gorimbo does go that takedown route, I hate to say, what might be the potential fight you might have to really nail in this fight card?
It's got to be the Moicano and Drew Dober fight, I would imagine. What are you thinking?
Stoliarenko and Luana Carolina.
Yeah.
Because I mean, look, it's one of those fights that I've been looking at and saying, okay, if Stoliarenko gets this thing to the ground, she might submit her in one round. Or if Carolina can just keep this on the feet, I feel like if one of them is optimal, I think Stoliarenko is more likely to be optimal because of the finishing upside, but I could also see Luana Carolina just peppering her from the outside.
Yeah, I can see her peppering her from the outside. But also she's like historically difficult to take down. It's just when she does get taken down, there's clearly a gap in the jiu-jitsu skill between Stoliarenko and Luana Carolina. But like we've seen, like Stoliarenko is a one-trick pony with that armbar, and she's so damn good at it. But if it fails, she's put on her back, and then she can get pounded out and reversed. And a fighter like Chelsea Chandler, who I actually thought was going to be okay, she dominated her. She just beat the hell out of her once she was able to defend those submissions. So, very tricky card, and not my favorite card, if I'm being honest, from a DFS standpoint, because I can make the case for a lot of these underdogs, but I'm kind of like getting torn, from side to side on who I actually think is going to win.
Yeah, I mean, and then you look at someone like a Charles Johnson, who has shown his inability to be able to stop a takedown. I mean, just look at his opponent. His takedown prop over on Prize Picks is 3.5. Yeah, and look, and a lot of that is obviously, as we've just seen, since Charles Johnson's been in the UFC, the guy cannot stop a takedown. But we're going to get right into the fights here. Let's get right into the main event, Pete. We've got Imavov taking on Dolidze. Dolidze is a plus 140 betting underdog, minus 170 for Imavov. Imavov is 8,600 on DK, $20 on FanDuel, where Dolidze is 7,600 on DK and $17 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I can't get Roman Dolidze fights correctly. I just can't. He's a guy that, I don't think is the best, but he keeps proving me wrong. And then, like, I don't know, man. The power's clearly there in his hands. The jiu-jitsu skills are there. The wrestling is inconsistent. The cardio seems to be suspect. I'm sure that he's been working on it. I know that he's been working with some top-tier wrestlers over in Georgia for this one. So, I don't know, man. It's difficult to see either one of these guys a part of a 5-round fight, to be honest. But I do think that the volume and the footwork of Nassourdine Imavov is what's going to pull me in Nassourdine Imavov's direction. I think it could be close, but if you look at Roman Dolidze's fights, ones that he's done well against, it's plotting type of fighters. Marvin Vettori, difficult task, but not necessarily the best footwork. Kyle Dawkins, that was against the cage. Phil Hawes, very volatile, doesn't really move around all that much. That Trevin Giles fight back in 2021 kind of set like a standard for what I think Roman Dolidze is, and kind of like capped his ceiling in my eyes. I don't know. I think you can just outsmart this guy, be the matador while he's the bull. And I really view Nassourdine Imavov as the matador here. We did see him step up in competition against Sean Strickland, and granted, Sean Strickland took that on short notice, but it was nice to see him go 5 rounds. And even when he looked absolutely gassed, he started to turn it on late. Granted, it was a little too late to try to come back from such a gap, but you saw him rebound in his previous bout against Chris Curtis, where he was looking phenomenal, taking him down, and that's a guy in Chris Curtis who has developed his takedown defense to be at a solid level. And I don't necessarily know who's going to be looking for the takedowns, because Dolidze is tricky on the ground. I would imagine Dolidze is going to be trying to take down the very mobile Nassourdine Imavov. I do think that the stick and move approach for Imavov is going to work for 25 minutes, and I think he's going to win a decision here. So I'm going to be picking Nassourdine Imavov, but like I told you, I'm pretty terrible at picking either one of these fighters, and I will reside with the slightly taller, slightly higher volume Nassourdine Imavov.
I love the question from Sam, because this is a thought that I had earlier this week, and I'm pretty sure instead of saying main card, Samuel meant main event, or his question was, is this main card fight a necessity as a DFS edge? I personally think not. Optimally speaking yet, I could be wrong. And this was something when I was initially looking at the salaries for this entire fight card, and, looking at fights that I probably wanted to get to, and the co-main event definitely is one of those fights I want to get to. I want to get to both sides of the main event. I mean, honestly, in multi-entries, I might go 50-50 just because of question marks I have on both guys in terms of being finished in a fight. But like, I look at the main event, I don't say like, even though for the most part, Pete, we sit here every Friday and we talk about the main event has got to be a priority. I mean, you always sit here every week and say underdogs and main event, co-main event should be priorities for you. But like, I just don't feel like the main event this week is a priority.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am with you. I don't necessarily think so, because I don't see a significant edge for either one of these guys, like in the grappling or the wrestling department. I think that if Dolidze shoots takedowns, Imavov will get taken down but get back up. I don't see somebody dominating in the wrestling or grappling. And I think on the feet, you're going to have Imavov treat him like a punching bag at times, but with no stopping power. So, like, I don't see knockdowns. I don't see a finish necessarily. So if I don't see a finish, and I kind of view this as pretty even, and Dolidze is going to be very, very strong, I think it's going to cap the volume a little bit of just the overall output. And, in mid 80, low 90 performance at 8,600 is okay. It's not going to hurt you, but I don't necessarily think it's going to bring you to the top.
Yeah, I mean, when you look over Prize Picks, so they've got 3 props up on Imavov. At least these were the numbers when I put my sheet together earlier this morning. Significant strike, 69.5. Fight time, 15.5. Fantasy score, 100.5. If I was going to touch anything of those 3 props, I think I might be going more than 69.5, especially if you think this thing's going to go 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of unfamiliar with the scoring in general for Prize Picks when it comes to that, but 100.5 seems high. Like, it seems high. Like, if you think he scores 100.5, you shouldn't be fading the main event. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't at 8,600. Yeah. Granted, it's 2 different platforms, but still, like, if I'm avoiding Imavov and I think he wins, I think he needs to score less than 95.
I will say this: if you are playing over on Prize Picks, and if you're someone that wants to put some, have some props over there on the Super Bowl, I know there is a freebie over there with Patrick Mahomes of a half passing yard in the Super Bowl. So if you're looking to maybe put those 4 or 5, 6 legs together on Prize Picks, that's a great one to give you, because I mean, look, it can be very. And I say this, like, for me, Prize Picks, I like to do 2 and 3 player lines in MMA. I really don't like to go more than that. I mean, yeah, I'll get crazy every once in a while and throw a 5-6 legger out there, but they're really hard to hit. I mean, it's no different than trying to hit, a 5-leg parlay if you're betting on something. So, but that's something to look over there. Now, the co-main event, which to me, I think should be the main event, even before what Moicano said earlier this week, I thought this was the best fight on the card, and that being Renato Moicano and Drew Dober. Moicano is a minus 190 betting favorite, plus 160 for Dober. Dober, $7,800 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Moicano, he is $8,400 on DK and $18 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, this fight's going to be fireworks, right? Like, I have a really hard time avoiding this fight, if I'm being honest. Like, the fight is probably not going the distance and probably going one of two ways. Drew Dober by knockout or Renato Moicano via submission. And we've seen deficiencies in both fighters' games. Renato Moicano has been knocked out several times. Drew Dober, despite his experience in MMA, clearly just does not have the same grappling skills as the rest of the division. And, he's a striker, big southpaw striker, throws that left hand, throws great combinations, can strike on the outside, excellent overall kickboxing. His durability is starting to deplete as time goes on because he's so willing to get into wars and has confidence in that left hand. Renato Moicano, I do think that his striking skill is almost up there with Drew Dober, but the durability is something that makes me a little bit, concerned about rostering too much Renato Moicano because if he does not land the takedown, or say he lands the takedown and Drew Dober gets back up, then I do think that, he could be a sitting duck for that left hand that Rafael dos Anjos landed numerous times. We've seen Jose Aldo, the Korean Zombie, Rafael Fiziev. I mean, we've seen a lot of people, but all the fighters that I mentioned are all championship type of caliber. So doesn't matter, though. You know what I mean? Sometimes power doesn't discriminate. And I think that Drew Dober's power is up there with some of the best within the division. So I'm going to lean in one direction. And it's just because I do think that the skills are there and he can avoid a little bit of the power. And all he needs is one grappling exchange. This is why, I'm really, really torn on this fight. And, for our contest, I might even avoid the fight because I really don't know how it's going to go. And I know that probably half the field is going to be on one, half's going to be on the other. And perhaps it happens in round 2 or round 3 and doesn't, give us the best score. But I do think that Renato Moicano's jiu-jitsu is so gross that if he takes Drew Dober down once, I think it's curtain. So I'm going to lean towards Renato Moicano because I do tend to slightly favor a grappler in a close fight. And, Drew Dober's just the grappling IQ is not there. And it's not there at all. And I tend to wonder, if it hits the mat, can he get up without giving up his back? Can he get up without putting himself in a terrible position? It did take, it did take Islam Makhachev 3 rounds to get rid of Drew Dober, but I think jiu-jitsu skill sets sometimes are different, and Renato's jiu-jitsu is pretty up there. So I'll slightly lean towards Renato Moicano at 8,400, but hell of a fight to target 8,400 or 7,800. I think that, you need one of them in your lineups.
Look, I agree with everything you said there. I couldn't really say it better myself. I mean, it's one of those things of, I can see how this fight doesn't get optimal. Also, beginning of the show, we always talk about game theory. And if you're getting in these big contests, whether, it's one of the 150 max or it's a $3 or the $18 one, I could very much see where you go, let me get a little bit less on the field. I mean, looking at ownership projections right now, you do look at Drew Dober and you say, man, I don't care whether you're talking on DraftKings or you're talking on FanDuel. I mean, FanDuel, just looking at ownership projections right now, you want to get different in the field? I know it's a crazy thought. Put Drew Dober as MVP. He's literally getting next to nothing ownership at MVP. I mean, and I could, you bring up a ton of great points about the grappling abilities and the grappling abilities of Renato Moicano and the grappling deficiencies of Drew Dober. But on the other hand, I have questions about Moicano's chin.
Yeah.
But the other thing about Renato Moicano, you look at his losses, it doesn't matter if it's 45 or 55, it is the elite of either division, where Drew Dober has, doesn't doesn't have the resume that Renato Moicano has. I mean, I think it's a fascinating fight. Looking over Prize Picks, so you have 4 props on Renato Moicano. Significant strikes 37.5, fight time 7.5, takedowns 1.5, fantasy score 80.5. Like, if you really love Renato Moicano to win this fight, I would just go after the fantasy score of 80.5. Just because I think that's the best one out there. I mean, the takedown prop, what scares me, and you just kind of basically brought this point, Pete, he may only need 1.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it kind of reminds me slightly of, like, Moicano is in this position similar to Jillian Robertson 2 weeks ago, where it's like everybody in the field is going to be on Jillian Robertson to win via submission because it's the most likely path. But I think that we've seen Drew Dober's durability start to deplete. The Frivola fight. You just don't know when that chin's really gone. The Terrence McKinney performance, like, Moicano has a great jab, and Moicano striking at a time he outproduced Calvin Kattar from the outside. You know what I mean? And like several other fighters where he's picking people apart. So maybe the craziest thing is that this does stay standing, and Moicano kind of picks him apart from the outside and maybe hurts him, maybe chin checks him, because if he wins via KO while everybody has it on submission, you can just think that Vegas is kind of licking their chops and they got all that money from the submission props. It's a fight that I think is going to be one hell of a fight. I expected it to be the main event. It's not, but I think it'll live up to the hype.
And if you're looking for a salary saver on FanDuel, $12 through Dober is really that salary saver that, to me, one of the salary savers that sticks out to me. Next up, we got Randy Brown taking on Muslim Salikhov. Randy Brown is a minus 280 betting favorite, plus 230 for Salikhov. Salikhov, $7,100 on DK, $10 on FanDuel. For Randy Brown, $9,100 on DK, $21 on FanDuel. Here's my first question to you, Pete, before you break this one down. Do you believe Muslim Salikhov is only 39 years old?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hey, this guy looks ancient, and he's very, very talented in the striking department, but as he's gotten older, he's become more selective with his output, which is tough for me to bet on. Like, I can't bet on a guy that's just unwilling to throw numbers, And I yell at my students and my fighters all the time, because in the gym, if you're throwing single shot, maybe 2-shot combinations, when you go out under the lights, you can basically cut that in half. You're going to be throwing single shots out there. You're not going to be working your combinations. Combinations are just not naturally going to come about. You have to practice large numbers in the gym. And he kind of reminds me of somebody who's just trying to find that perfect shot. He's a sniper. And granted, it's worked out really well for him. He times people really well. He has excellent spinning techniques. It's just he's older now. And timing tends to go as you get older. Speed tends to go. And I just think the reaction time of Muslim Salikhov in a fight where he has an 8-inch reach disadvantage is not going to work for him. I know that there has been volatility surrounding Randy Brown. I do view this fight as a mismatch given where they are in their careers. 33, rude boy Randy Brown, fought some top-tier guys. Wellington Turman decision, okay. Lost to Jack Della Maddalena, no fault in that. Trinaldo win. Chaos Williams split. Jared Gooden win. Meanwhile, Muslim Salikhov lost to Nicholas Dalby, who's a pace pusher. Beat Andre Fiallo. Lost to Jing Liang. And then win over Trinaldo in a split over Zaleski dos Santos. So I think the reach is going to be too much. I think Randy Brown will touch him from the outside, drop him with a right hand en route to finishing him. Everybody's expecting this to go the distance, and I almost think that Randy Brown's going to turn it up.
Yeah, I was just about to pull up what the fight goes to the distant prop is at on that one. But before I get there, talk about overall Prize Picks. I definitely agree with pretty much a lot you do say there in terms of this one. But overall Prize Picks, you got Randy Brown. He is at 66.5 significant strikes, 14 3/4 fight time, 88.5. And look, if you think he's going to get Muslim Salikhov out there, to me, the fight time prop is the one that you look at the most there, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, you look on paper, it seems like a fight that's going to go the distance. I just think the range and the reach advantage for Randy Brown is going to work wonders for him here. Not to mention that I do think the the willingness to grapple will be there from both sides, and I do think the better grappler is Randy Brown. Better jiu-jitsu guy is Randy Brown. So we could also see a submission happen. It doesn't even have to be necessarily a knockout. But yeah, I tend to really like Randy Brown fights. I like really like him, and maybe it's just I'm a little biased towards his skill set, but the skills check out, and I don't think that Salikhov's going to chin him here.
Yeah, I just look over best fight odds. A lot of the books are pretty much the same with this fight goes to the distance at -135. Fight doesn't go the distance +100. If you think the fight does go the distance, the best book at least they have there -126 over FanDuel Sportsbook. So, I say this on the show all the time. I think that's one of the things to always look at is look at the betting odds, look at the props, and just kind of and see what the betting public is thinking, and look at those line movements to see kind of where the line movements have happened there. But we'll see what happens there. Next up, we got a female matchup. We got Natalie Silva taking on Viviane Araujo. Natalie Silva is a -370 betting favorite, +280 for Viviane Araujo. Araujo, $6,700 on DK, $8 on FanDuel. For Natalie Silva, $9,500 on DK, $23 on FanDuel. Pete, like you love the style of Natalie Silva, but man, I wonder, have we this price point? How much does it scare you?
Yeah, I really, really like Natalia Silva. From a DraftKings standpoint, I don't love the salary of Natalia Silva at all. I mean, 9,500, it's kind of tough, right? Like last week, Jasmine Jasudavicius, or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago, she has a wrestling ceiling, whereas Natalia Silva, she's traditionally a striker. She can wrestle, she can do everything, but like within her career, you've seen that when she did face some adversity in her career, it was when she was taken down, when she was put on her back. So basically, all her wrestling is defensive, and it's tough to have a high striking ceiling unless you're going to go out there and end the fight within 1 minute. Which quick win bonus is always live. Could it happen? Sure. Outside of that, could you throw 400 significant strikes? I mean, it's possible, and she could still break the slate given her total and significant strike outputs, but I just don't see it. I mean, at 9,500, it's somewhat, it's restrictive based on your builds. It's a parlay piece. I think Natalia Silva is going to have this fight. It's a great test for her within her career, though, because like Viviane Araujo has fought Caitlin Chukagian despite losing, has a win over Andrea Lee, fought and lost to Alexa Grasso and Amanda Hebos, and most recently beat Jennifer Maia. But like, I don't know, man. Like, if Natalia Silva can defend these takedowns, I think that the clear striking advantages for Natalia Silva, the speed, the volume, the youth and athleticism. So, it's kind of crazy to see that Natalia Silva is 27. Meanwhile, Viviane Araujo is 37. So, I just think it's kind of appropriate. It's a tough fight. Get this girl up the rankings. Number 8 Araujo against number 12 Natalia Silva, and I think they're going to swap spots here, and Natalia Silva is going to get a decision victory.
Yeah, I was just looking at MMA Junkie. It looks like Viviane Araujo is one of 2 fighters so far who has not stepped onto the scale. I was just checking one of the timelines of one of the reporters I know is there, and Amy Kaplan has not put anything up on her. So that's you got to that weigh-in window is coming to a close here soon, and
is that 2?
Yeah. By the way, we love to find comedy in MMA. So we got Aaron Bronstetter, who's up there in Canada, now works for now used to be with TSN. He's now with Sportsnet. So we have the box when athletes have to strip down to make weight. So it is now sponsored by Riz Pharma, which is the UFC's official erectile dysfunction and hair loss medication partner.
Come on, dog. What the hell?
This shit happens in MMA. That is the only way to describe this.
Product placement, right? Product placement. What the hell? Do you remember when, like, the condoms, like, everybody was sponsored by the condoms everywhere?
Condom Depot, man. You don't remember that?
Yeah, everybody had Condom Depot on their trunks, and it was like, what the hell is going on?
Bro, when I was in college, we had this place in the party district. They literally had a barrel of free condoms that you could just literally go in and grab one.
Yeah, They had that in our college as well, which, I totally support that. That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
Supporting all that stuff. It's just funny, the products and the companies that want to get behind MMA fighting. It's just hilarious.
Yeah, but overall, my thought on Silva and Araujo is I just don't love the price point because I just don't. You need a finish. You need Natalia Silva to go out there and get a quick, a finish within 2 rounds. I think if you get now, I would say this on the betting side. If you think that maybe Viviane Araujo slows down in that late second, third round, maybe you start to look at those round 3 props on Natalia Silva. In terms of this one there, you can get a pretty good number there. Let's move over to our next matchup. You got Khizriev and Muradov. Muradov plus 125, minus 150. Khizriev, he is 8,800 on DK, $16 on FanDuel. And then Muradov is 7,400 on DK and $14 on FanDuel, Pete.
I'll tell you what, knee-jerk reaction. I saw Muradov as a dog. I'm like, dude, sign me up. But I had to kind of pump the brakes a little bit because I think my previous breakdown and previous perception of Makhmud Muradov was when he was breaking onto the scene. Massive, beautiful record of 26-8, right? It's okay, that's huge for MMA, and that's very, very impressive. His striking skill set's great. At times, though, it's kind of all right, when's that finish coming? And eventually it did happen against Trevor Smith. Then he followed it up by knocking out Andrew Sanchez, who had all the wrestling in the world and chose to strike for years upon end. And then he was doing great against Gerald Meerschaert, priced as one of the biggest favorites ever. And then, makes a mistake, gets his back taken, and shows zero grappling IQ and making very fundamental mistakes on the mat, getting rear naked choked by GM3. And GM3 does that to so many people, but usually it's guillotines. Any types of chokes. But, I'm a stickler and I yell at my guys like crazy, okay, about turning your back to get up. It's a habit that a lot of wrestlers have, right? Because they don't enjoy, or they're so accustomed to, they hit the mat, can't let their shoulders get square on the mat, can't get pinned, have to belly down. Bellying down kind of carries over into MMA, and that belly down is just a slight moment of you exposing your back. And a lot of guys do it as a bailout to escape a takedown against the cage too. And when you have somebody who's a very accomplished grappler from Russia, I don't like that. And then we saw the same type of thing happen against a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Caio Borralho. Surprisingly didn't submit Makhmud Muradov, but out-grappled him to a T. Then we have Makhmud Muradov go up against a guy in Brian Barberena who doesn't necessarily have the same jiu-jitsu chops as a lot of these other guys. And offensively, Muradov's wrestling is great. Defensively, he can defend some. It's just there's that jiu-jitsu lapse. And I do think the jiu-jitsu skills lie with Aliaskhab Khizriev, the Black Wolf. When I see this guy having 4 rear naked chokes against the guy who turns his back a lot, when I see the fact that Muradov was wet blanketed on the mat against Caio Borralho, granted, difficult fights, and Aliaskhab is coming up, a year and 10 months ago, defeating Dennis Tululin in round 2, who is not good at grappling at all. But what I view is that Russian type of wrestling against a guy who just still is making some fundamental mistakes. They could totally make adjustments, and Makhmud Muradov could sprawl and brawl his way to a Chuck Liddell knockout or decision. But Aliaskhab, a part of a really good camp in American Top Team now, I think he's going to level up, and I think that he's going to end up finding the back and getting a rear naked choke or just a very dominant decision. So at 8,800, I'm going to be picking the Black Wolf Aliaskhab Khizriev to beat Makhmud Muradov.
Yeah, I think for me, it's about kind of looking at where, from a DFS perspective, of where does ownership kind of go in relation to those fighters that are in the salary range around him. By the way, give a little note here. Luana Carolina has missed weight by 3 pounds, weighing in at 129 pounds. So be monitoring Twitter to see what's kind of going to happen with that matchup there. And you look at Aliaskhab, 46.5 significant strike prop on Prize Picks, 10.5 fight time minutes, and a fancy score of 90.5. No
take the
no
over
take
on the score. That's my favorite of those 3 you mentioned.
All right, let's move over. Next up, we got another matchup here. We got Charles Radtke taking on Gilbert Urbina. Urbina minus 210 betting fair, plus 175 for Charles Radtke. Urbina is 9,000 on DK, $18 on FanDuel, and for Radtke, 7,200 on DK and $12 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, so I wanted to get behind Charles Radtke a lot in his debut because I know two people that train him. My buddy Mike Valleyflow from Valleyflow Striking is basically his home gym. And in addition to that, Charles Radtke was getting in a lot of work with my Muay Thai coach from out in New Mexico, Crew Dom. And that debut Charles Radtke had against Blood Diamond, he landed some good boxing combinations, had Blood Diamond on skates at times, but man, oh man, was like trying to survive in moments of that, and they got booed out of the stadium essentially, and resulting in one of the most angry post-fight speeches I've heard in quite some time. Radtke, he seems limited, if I'm being honest. He seems like a guy that's pretty green, good power in his hands, and going up against a very volatile fighter in Gilbert Urbina. Urbina looks really good and kind of reminds me of several fighters throughout their career and that look awesome offensively, and they're great at being the hammer, but the second they're the nail, they tend to give. He kind of has like TJ Brown similarities, and that's kind of who I was just trying to put my finger on, who I think he reminds me of, where it's like offensively all the skills are there. The wrestling's there, the power, the volume, the pace, and the cardio is there. It's just like the mental lapses, and then all of a sudden they're going to give up. Granted, it was a KO defeat to Tresean Gore on The Ultimate Fighter and a rear naked choke defeat against Brian Battle on relative short notice. We saw the potential in that previous matchup against Orion Kosei here, where he got a TKO in round 2 and just completely blew the doors off in that matchup and showed that pace, pressure, and just volume that I'm talking about. So I like Gilbert Urbina here. I think that he's less limited than Charles Radtke, and I think that he can break down Radtke over time and get him out of there. So give me Gilbert Urbina at a pretty awesome price tag at 9,000. Just kind of know what you're rostering, though. Understand the volatility.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And by the way, Urbina, he does have a takedown prop over on Prize Picks at 1.5, fantasy score 96.5, and significant strikes at 55.5. I think I'd be looking at that takedown prop, going more than 1.5.
I like that as well, Jason.
Next up, we got a female matchup, a rematch from 5 years ago. Molly McCann taking on Diana Belbita. Belbita is a plus 215 betting underdog, minus 265 for McCann. McCann 9,300 on DK, $22 on FanDuel. Belbita 6,900 on DK and $9 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, I think the value is gone from Molly McCann. She is a massive, massive name. Sponsored by Barstool or whatever. Remember they got behind her pretty big when Patty Pimlet was on the card, and she hit that girl Luana Carolina with a spinning elbow, followed it up with another spinning elbow over Hannah Goldie. That was her high, and I don't think that she's going to reach that peak again. We saw her limitations and knew her limitations going up there against a grappling specialist and Erin Blanchfield, who I think is going to be fighting for a title and within that conversation for the next 5 years. And then we saw against Julija Stoliarenko, a one-trick pony, fight IQ mistakes and mental lapses, and ends up getting armbarred. We've seen this fight before. We've seen this fight before between Molly McCann and Diana Belbita, and Molly McCann beat the hell out of Belbita. But Belbita's tough. Like, Belbita's very, very tough, and she's not going to go away. Belbita in the first fight, it went 15 minutes. She scored 48 points in a loss, landed 104 significant strikes, had a takedown, had 98 significant strikes, 48 in a loss, and I actually think Diana Belbita has gotten a lot better since that time. I don't necessarily think that the same fight's going to happen. You have Belbita with the reach advantage. You have Belbita with the height advantage. You have Molly McCann, who she's probably in really good physical shape. But, testing out a new weight class, I do think that having to cut that excess weight is difficult. She could have done it the right way. I just think the value's gone. And I do think that there's value on 6,900 Diana Belbita. Whether she wins the fight or not, I'm more inclined to overweight myself to Diana Belbita than Molly McCann. I don't know if I'm on an island, but, the Karolina Kowalkiewicz fight, who she just fought, she had 2 takedowns, scored 58 fantasy points in a loss. Say she got that nod, which she shouldn't have. She would have got 88 fantasy points. You can always take Molly McCann down. Molly McCann can mix in takedowns in her own right, but I do think that Diana Belbita has improved a lot more, up until this point than Molly McCann. It's almost like Molly McCann has kind of, stagnated a little bit, plateaued. So I'm going to say that this fight's going to be really close, or closer than obviously the previous one. And if I think that the value's on one side versus the other, shoot, man, I guess I'll just pick her. I'm going to pick Diana Belbita to upset Molly McCann. I can see Molly McCann still getting the nod and still winning, but this could be my fighter in a loss that scores decently well. So give me Diana Belbita.
You're not on an island, Pete. You're not on an island this one. I mean, one of the things is, I think if Molly is able to utilize her wrestling, I think that's going to be the key for her. But,
Yes.
My thought is, and you bring up a tremendous point about the value on Molly McCann is there. Plus, the other thing about this one is, I think you just kind of got 2 fighters who are very much at the end of the line here. And so, and it's a weird matchup to me. It's just a weird matchup.
Well, you know how rematches go, right? Like, they tend to be sometimes that it's the same fight plays out, but a lot of times it's closer, and that underdog or that person who lost in the first one makes those correct adjustments. And who's hungrier right now? I would probably say Diana Belbita is hungrier to get a win over somebody who beat her, who has a big notable name. So yeah, maybe it's just my DFS analysis talking, where like in 150 maxes, you should be way overweight to Diana Belbita and way underweight to Molly McCann, given the cap on McCann's ceiling. But I'll ride with it. I'll ride with the pick still and say Belbita wins.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. We're just talking about, the takedown abilities. And our next matchup, we got a guy who, he can't stop a takedown. Charles Johnson taking on Azat. Azat is a minus 245 betting favorite, plus 200 for Johnson. Johnson, 7,200 on DK, $11 on FanDuel. And on the other side, you got 8,900 on DK and $19 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I want to pick Charles Johnson. I really do. And it came down to, am I going to pick Charles Johnson or am I going to pick Diana Belbita? And it's like, fool me once. Fool me twice. Fool me 3 times. You ain't fooling me 4 times. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know, bro. I mean, like, I can't keep going back to this inner G Charles Johnson type of vibe where it's almost like he knows what he needs to do, but he doesn't apply it. He knows the adjustments he needs to make, but he just doesn't do them. He thinks that he's winning a fight when he's most likely losing a fight. Like every now and then you get this damage versus control argument that happens, and, I'm all for it. I tend to always side with a guy who's winning larger, moments of a round or larger moments of a fight. And I think for the majority of it, Azat Maksum, despite not necessarily having a great debut against Tyson Nam, who's a hell of a fighter to take down. And I actually thought that, Maksum probably lost that bout. I think he's not going to have as much resistance in the wrestling department. And, I think if you kind of critique Azat Maksum's performance, it's you didn't go to the wrestling early and often like you should have. And it's probably a stylistic matchup and the stylistic clash between Nam and him. That's why he just felt the resistance and couldn't do it. But against Charles Johnson, you'll take him down. He'll get back up, but you could take him down over and over and over. So, do I think the better striker is Charles Johnson? Absolutely. I think that he'll light Azat Maksum up from distance. It's just at any moment, Maksum chains together a takedown. He makes the round look a lot more competitive. And Charles Johnson, instead of like immediately defending, he will almost go with the takedown and then try to work himself back up. Almost like try to Granby out and then work himself up. And I hate this Granby roll that everybody resorts to. There's few people that do it correctly, and there's plenty of people that just flop all over the place and then think that they're getting back up. And then it's just, I don't know, man. I just fight the takedown correctly. Fight to get an underhook. Whizzer correctly. Position your hips correctly. Work yourself back up. Get an underhook if you get taken down. Butt scoot to the cage. There's just so many things that I can poke holes at in Charles Johnson's game. I want him to win here, but you have a 17-0 prospect and gets a guy who is battle-tested at 13-6. I just can't pull the trigger, Jason. I'm going to say that Azat Maksum wins a decision here. And, according to that takedown prop over on Prize Picks you mentioned, it's looking like they are forecasting the same type of performance. Tons of takedowns, solid control en route to a decision victory.
Yeah, if you're playing that takedown prop on Prize Picks, like you have to go more. You can't go under. You can't. You can't go under.
That would be the most frustrating when it hits in the first round, because he makes me want to swear, because he's just he rolls, he goes with the takedown, he's like, his hands are out. He's not going 2-on-1 to fight the hands. It's like, bro.
If there was a book that offered a takedown prop and it's 3.5, what do you think the under 3.5 be juiced to? Plus 500?
Yeah, right. Yeah, probably. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very clear path for him in that one. Next up, we have got Rodriguez and Gorimbo. Gorimbo minus 260 plus 210 for Rodriguez. Rodriguez 7,000 on DK, $10 on FanDuel. And for Gorimbo, he is 9,200 on DK and $21 on FanDuel. And the MVP ownership is very popular for Gorimbo.
Yeah, I like Themba Gorimbo here. Do I like his striking? Not necessarily. But I do think that, in a lot of his performances, going back to the regional tape and everything, that there are some things I like, and that's the constant pressure, and the takedowns. I really, really, really like it. It's almost Jacob Malkoun-esque, where it's just consistent takedowns, and they know what they do well, so they go back to it. Jacob Malkoun, everybody's watched his fights, right? And everybody's seen that head on the outside single where he steps behind their base leg and dumps them. Nobody's been able to stop the damn thing. And, you know it's coming, but can you stop it? Do you have an answer? And oddly enough, I think Themba, the answer, Gorimbo, is going to get himself another decision or possibly a submission win here against Pete Rodriguez. I'm seeing a lot of love in the market for Pete Rodriguez. And I clearly think it's because, the hands are alive for a knockout. Hands are so alive for a knockout. His combinations are great. You saw what he just did to Mike Jackson by throwing the knee amidst a beautiful combination. He's landing some strikes against Jack Della Maddalena, who just completely outclasses him. You go throughout his career, you see that there are, beautiful KO victories. He does get taken down in some of his regional fights. But if he does get back up, he throws those hammers, and a lot of times those opponents just fall and crumble to the power that Pete Rodriguez possesses. So, I think he's a bad underdog? No. Do I think that he's a GPP dart throw? Absolutely. And that's the category I place him at, 7,000. High upside for a finish if he wins. I don't necessarily think that I almost think that he's a finish-only type of fighter. I don't think that he can win a decision, and perhaps I'll be proven wrong. But Themba Gorimbo's ability to work for takedowns and also incorporate some submissions. And, we saw him take down AJ Fletcher, who I actually think has a really good ground game, and then over and over, and then ended up getting submitted. But look what he did to Takashi Sato, who, has a great judoka background, always been able to get taken down from a wrestling standpoint. Very good striker. He dropped him with a right hand. He just outworked him. And even if he was taken down and put in a bad spot, I saw the things that made me go, okay, nice, check mark. I feel like an MMA scout where when I see them do the correct things that are fundamentals, it really, brings a smile to my face. The guy didn't, he went for an underhook from the bottom. Shit that you should be doing in beginner and intermediate class, without even question. But a lot of times these guys in UFC and Bellator alike, just on the high end, they just don't. They make some simple mistakes, and I made simple mistakes a lot throughout my early career, but I fixed them. And I think Themba Gorimbo is just going to have such a gap in wrestling skill here against Pete Rodriguez that I think he's going to put up a hell of a score. One way or another, I don't see how this fight isn't optimal one way or another. I mean, maybe Gorimbo just wins a decision, scores 98, 100 fantasy points, and we got some other quick wins. But I think that he's a pretty solid play. So I like him here at 9,200.
Yeah, if you want to take Pete Rodriguez win via knockout, plus 275 is a number that I'm seeing there. And Pete Rodriguez did make weight. He's had some weigh-in issues since coming into the UFC. By the way, Luana Carolina is the only fighter who has missed weight. She missed weight by 3 pounds here. And the Themba Gorimbo 1.5 takedown prop is a little interesting to me in terms of this one, Pete. The 95.5 fantasy score, I mean, if you think he's going to go out there and get a finish in the first, second round, he should be able to hit that number. I don't think I'd really want to touch the 24.5 significant strikes just because, if this thing gets done quick, I don't think he gets to that number. Next up, we got Bilder versus Lee. Lee is a minus 155 betting favorite, plus 130 for Bilder. Bilder 7,900 DK, 14 on FanDuel. And for Lee, he is $8,316.
Yeah, I mean, this fight's very interesting and difficult for me to pick. I tend to think it goes long, though. I tend to think that this fight ends up going 15 minutes and isn't a necessity for your GPP lineups. Hopefully it doesn't go 15 minutes with crazy volume or crazy takedowns. But if takedowns were to occur, I would believe that Blake Bilder, who has great grappling pedigree, solid boxing, he would be the one initiating the takedowns. I would think that the Korean Tiger, JeongYeong Lee, would be staying on the outside, looking to counter-strike, land that beautiful right hand that he has. On the regional scene and up until the road to the UFC, you saw when he lands that right hand, he shuts people's lights off. And, Blake Bilder, throughout his regional career, we saw against Regivaldo Carvalho, he was knocked down numerous times. I think, honestly, Jason, I think it's like 4 or 5 times he was knocked down in that fight. And then ultimately came back and got a KO, TKO himself. But it's pretty weird to get knocked down that many times against in one fight. Perhaps you're just not seeing the shots. I tend to think the speed advantage is going to be there for JeongYeong Lee. 5'10", 73-inch reach against 68-inch reach for Bilder. I think that JeongYeong Lee on the outside is just going to work his way to winning the better moments of the fight. Do I like him if he gets into a grappling exchange with Blake Bilder? Not necessarily. JeongYeong Lee has thrown up some awesome submission attempts in his own right, but I do think that Blake Bilder will be too wise and too slick when it comes to the jiu-jitsu to get caught by anything JeongYeong Lee throws up. So give me JeongYeong Lee to win 2 of the 3 rounds in a hard-fought decision in a hell of a fight. But I don't hate the Blake Bilder underdog call. I mean, truthfully, international talent sometimes struggles inside, the UFC. And every now and then we see an international superstar. And JeongYeong Lee could be that guy. I wasn't all that impressed with his previous performance against Julija. That went to a split, though.
Yeah, I think if you look at an ownership play, I think on either side of this one, if you think it's going to invite finish, I do like it from an ownership play over there. And I would say over on Prize Picks, I probably would like the over 12 and a half fight time minutes on this one, just because I'm like you, I do think this is likely going to go 15 minutes. Now next up we got Stoliarenko and Carolina. Carolina plus 125 betting underdog, minus 154 Stoliarenko 8,200 on DK, 15 on FanDuel. Carolina is 8,000 on DK, $15 on FanDuel, as I just mentioned. Carolina has missed weight by 3 pounds.
Yeah, and I actually think it'll help her, right? We don't necessarily know the ins and outs behind weight misses. I'm telling you right now, Jason and I know that they're strategic from time to time. But I almost think, from a promotion standpoint, you got to be careful. You got to be careful because you don't want to give the promotion any reason to let you go. In women's MMA, I tend to think that you have a little bit more of a chance to stay around because of the lack of depth of the division. Luana Carolina, pretty difficult to take down. Pretty tall for the division. She stands at 5. It's crazy she's only listed as 5'6", but when you watch her, she looks like she's much taller than that. And fighters tend to struggle to get underneath her. I mean, a fighter with an incredible wrestling pedigree and Lupita Godinez struggled to take her down. And you saw Luana Carolina pick up a unanimous decision in that fight. Has a split win over Poliana Botelho. Got knocked out by that spinning elbow by Molly McCann. Hard-fought loss to Joanne Calderwood. And then most recently a decision win over Ivana Petrovic, who had hype coming into the UFC, but that's why I always say battle tested in the UFC will always get my lean. You have the one trick pony in Julija Stoliarenko with the incredible armbar attempts, the very good jiu-jitsu, very hittable on the feet, and volatile cardio. Like that's something that I can honestly say where it's like she looks really good if she's not met with resistance. If she's met with resistance, she tends to fall apart and the wheels fall off fast. I saw that against Julia Avila, which was 2 years ago. Alexis Davis at that time shouldn't necessarily be beating you. Picked up the armbar finish over Jessica Rose Clark, whose fight IQ is completely absent. Chelsea Chandler fight is where it's like she got bullied against a bigger fighter who just gave her some resistance. Didn't fall for the armbar. And then Molly McCann I talked about Molly McCann's fight IQ. So, I think this fight's optimal. I think this fight's probably optimal, and that's not necessarily saying anything that's, crazy. It's the price point. 8,200, 8,000. Hard to get away from the fight. Tons of volatility. If you think Stoliarenko finds an armbar 8,200, she's an excellent play. I tend to think Luana maybe gets put in a bad position, survives, defends some takedowns, and then starts voluming her on the feet, or possibly picks up a KO, TKO. But I know that she doesn't have a lot of stopping power behind her shots. So I'll lean with a Carolina decision. 8,000. Maybe somehow this fight doesn't turn out to be optimal. But I think that, it's a very difficult fight that the under is probably most likely hitting.
And this may be the leverage play of the week. In terms of when you look at where ownership is sitting at right now, it's potentially where the leverage is at here. I don't really love anything on Prize Picks. Stoliarenko 45.5 significant strikes, 12.5 fight time minutes, a fantasy score of 66.5. I mean, look, if you tell me this thing is going to hit the mat, I love Juliana Stoliarenko. If you tell me this thing is going to hit the mat, but like, Pete, this is low level women's UFC competition here. I mean,
very low level.
I mean, it's tough to have a lot of confidence in it, but unfortunately, I think we might have to roster here. Next up, we got Quinones taking on Medeiros. Medeiros minus 135 plus 115 for Quinones. Quinones 7,700 on DK, 15 on FanDuel. And for Marquel, he is 8,500 on DK and $16 on FanDuel.
Yeah, so this is probably going to be a very popular underdog pick for most people, and it's going to be Lana Quinones because of how he impressed us all and how he stepped up against Nasrat Haqparast on short notice. It was 4 months ago. He went 15 minutes with him, but boy, oh boy, did he bring it. He brought it to him, and he didn't quit, which is something that's like, it's pretty impressive against a guy, Nasrat Haqparast, who's knocked out plenty of people, Jamie Malarkey most recently. So it's like, you have Quinones, who scored 61 fantasy points in a loss, landed 148 significant strikes, threw 152. So it's like, it's crazy that what the volume that Quinones put out there, but largely due to because Nasrat Haqparast is so boxing oriented and boxing heavy that Quinones just kind of, mix it up, threw tons of kicks, chopped away, and, it's pretty obvious to protect your face and shell up and see the hands coming. Nasrat's striking is somewhat limited despite being effective. And I think that's why we saw Quinones look so damn good. You have Marquel Medeiros here coming in from Factory X Muay Thai, which is an excellent gym. And I think my new thing, I'm going back to how I used to be, is I'm hesitant to get behind people who are making their debut in the UFC. Like I'll almost always pick the other guy. And it's because there's a lot into, making your UFC debut. Your octagon jitters. Have you fought anybody who's actually going to give you resistance and give you a fight? Are you just fighting, people that are going to fall down for you? Like Quinones, I look at his record, and the Nasrat Haqparast fighter was clearly the best guy that he's fought. He got submitted relatively quickly against Jason Knight on The Ultimate Fighter. I'm sure that he learned a lot on the Ultimate Fighter experience. But like Marquel Medeiros comes from Factory X, training with top level guys on a day in and day out. And this is somebody that they've been talking extremely high of. Hopefully it's not just coach speak and it's real. So I'll be picking Markel Medeiros to actually win a decision here. And the reason being is because I know that Quinones looked really good in his UFC debut against Nasrat, but I think it's because his opponent wasn't mixing in leg kicks. Markel is a fantastic leg kicker, and he switches stances, so I don't have to worry about him being so dependent on one side. He throws good hands, and he chops away at the leg kicks a lot, and it's something that I actually think Quinones could struggle with, and that could really limit the volume, and I think it can hurt Quinones. So I'll be picking Markel. I know he's making his debut and everything I just said, but I'll be leaning in Markel's direction to win a decision. Don't hate the Quinones underdog call to kind of fill your lineup, but I'll probably be relatively underweight to this fight, thinking it goes 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Over on Prize Picks, Medeiros, 66.5 strikes landed, 12.5 fight time minutes, 93.5 fantasy score. I think that fight time is where you attacked this one in terms of this matchup. Then we got a heavyweight matchup, which I already know what Pete's thoughts are, and it's going to be kind of interesting to see what kind of dialogue we have here. We got Jamal Pogues taking on Thomas Peterson. Peterson minus 170, Pogues plus 140. Pogues 7,500 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. For Peterson, he's 8,700 on DK and $17 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I was all about Steven. What is this? I said Steven Peterson. No, I don't ever want to talk about Steven Peterson again because Steven Peterson let me down. It's Thomas Peterson against Jamal Pogues. But yeah, man, like Thomas Peterson is a fantastic wrestler, a JUCO national champion. He does what I make all of my heavyweights do, and what I kind of advocate in our gym. It's stop trying to shoot big double leg takedowns. Stop trying to muscle everything against heavyweights, because if you end up underneath a heavyweight's hips, that's the worst place to be. They spin around, they land ground and pound, it's over. The fight's going to be done. What you should do is you should test the balance of all these heavyweights, and even light heavyweights. Test the balance. Attack with single leg takedowns. And guess what? Thomas Peterson has done that within his career. He's done that over and over and over. We saw it on Dana White's Contender Series. Granted, I did not like his opponent, Chandler Cole, in that matchup. Thomas Peterson just goes for a single leg. He'll treetop it. Sometimes he'll run the pipe, but I just love the fact that he's going single first instead of just shooting a double leg or just trying to engage in an upper body type of wrestling. My issue is that there are limitations to Peterson, and this is his UFC debut. And he doesn't necessarily come from a really touted gym. I know that he has one big training partner who's really good, and he's also trained with a guy who's a former Olympian within his area in Minnesota, in prep for this. But I just think from an MMA standpoint, he doesn't have an MMA guy of Jamal Pogues' caliber to train with or compete against. He takes people down, and when he takes them down, he's able to land ground and pound and finish them relatively quickly. He took Waldo Cortez Acosta down numerous times, and then started showboating and ended up getting knocked out and dropped in round 3 of their bout, which was a year and 9 months ago. So I'm not in love with his striking. I think that he's okay. He strikes enough into his takedowns. It's just what happens if he's forced to stand up. I know Jamal Pogues let me down and let other people down against Mick Parkin. I don't even remember who I was on that fight, but I just remember he just looked terrible. And previous to that, he looked excellent against Josh Parisian, landing beautiful takedowns over and over and over. He can offensively wrestle. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's also fought top-tier competition throughout his entire career. Alex Polizzi, Mick Parkin, Josh Parisian, Jared Vandera multiple times on the regional scene. So I think that a guy who's trained under Joe Stevenson for a long part, now a part of my favorite gym, Syndicate, I actually think that he's going to pull this off. And it takes a lot for me to back somebody who is a part of Syndicate MMA. But I almost think Thomas Peterson coming in as a favorite, I think he's a little too green for this fight. I think he's a little too green. You put Thomas Peterson in there against Josh Parisian, I'm picking Thomas Peterson. Jamal Pogues, his striking's really good, man. He throws good hands and good kicks, good knees. I think Pogues is going to do it. And I think that at his price point, it allows a lot of flexibility for us to get to some of these top tier options and maybe two of them. So if I'm wrong, okay. But you always hear me say main event, co-main event, underdogs, women's MMA, and heavyweight MMA. And guess what? Heavyweight MMA underdog, Jamal Pogues for the win. Let's go, Stormtrooper.
Ugh. Ugh.
I'm doing it.
I don't want to get to really either side of this one. I really don't. Like, to me, this is the lower 20% of the UFC heavyweight division. I was like, you mentioned Chandler Cole's name. Like, I have a great relationship with Chandler.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shit.
No. I'll tell you. I can't tell you how many times Chandler's told me he's going to cut down to 205. I've had managers tell me Chandler Cole should be trying to cut down 185 pounds.
Yeah. No, yeah, man. These guys in this weight class,
he's not at this level. He's just, look.
It's discipline, and it's also just like, if these guys are used to being big, it's tough for them.
I love talking to Chandler, but not a good resume.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. And
I think, Pete, you know what I'm inferring here? Not a good strength of schedule. And
right.
It's just
Thomas
one of those
Peterson,
things.
That was a great win. So, like, for me, I don't know. I think, like, it's not necessarily been cupcake matchups for Thomas Peterson, but what happens when he's with a guy that's not necessarily going to fall down?
Yeah,
I don't think Pogues is going to fall down.
The price point is what just concerns me. The 8,700 price tag. And even, I mean, I feel like this should be more of like 83.79.
Agree.
You know, and at 83.79, like I'd be like, okay, all right, it's heavyweights, but this price point, that the price point's what scares me. By the way, Thomas Peterson's takedown prop is at 2 over at Prize Picks. By the way, Samuel, I appreciate your super chat. We'll get to your super chat here in a moment. Let's get to our straight up fight picks here first. The main event, I'm gonna go Imavov. Give me Moicano in the co-main.
Moicano.
I will go Brown. Silva. Khizriev.
Yes. Khizriev for me.
Urbina. Give me underdog number 1, Diana Belbita.
Dude, I can't believe we're on the same page. Diana Belbita for me too. I don't care if I'm wrong.
They by the way, they did a stare down, and McCann would not do a stare down with her. She would, so that's kind of interesting. I don't know, maybe there's a little bad blood there.
She's scared, bro. She's scared.
I'll go Azat.
Maksum.
Gorimbo. Give me underdog number 2 in Blake Bilder.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I'm going to go Lee.
I'll go Stoliarenko.
Ooh. Going Carolina.
Medeiros. Peterson.
Pogues, baby. Pogues to the top.
I want to get Sam's super chat in here first. Sam, as always, I appreciate. He says, "Thanks for the content, the great work, guys. Can you guys be able to rank fights to prioritize?" Just kind of looking at the fight card. I'm just going top to bottom from the first fight on all the way up. Stoliarenko Carolina. I don't know if I put that in the prioritize just because, man, it's a low level women MMA. Gorimbo Rodriguez, I think a fight you have to prioritize. And then you got some takedowns. Azat, Urbina.
Yeah. Okay. For me, dude, how the hell is the co-main event not a priority? It's gotta be.
Yeah,
Moicano, Dober, it has to be number 1 for me. After that, if I'm being honest, what is number 2? I think it's the first fight of the night. I think it's Thomas Peterson against Jamal Pogues, Jason's favorite. And I know that's why you're saying no, but I think it is. One way or another, right? Massive takedown into a ground and pound, or you got a guy who stuffs the takedowns and beats the hell out of Thomas Peterson on the feet, knocks his ass out. I think one way or another, that first fight of the night.
Oh, God. Yeah, I don't know if I can really get there. I really don't know if I can get there.
Shit. I'm loving it.
Making me choke up over here. So I don't know if I can get into it.
Jason's gonna croak if he has to roster the first fight of the night. Relax.
Oh
dude.
Man, I literally I think this will be when I go into Cruncher. I think this is going to be one of those cards I really kind of go heavy in terms of really set up a lot of rules, setting up exposures, and sometimes I overthink it to wait. The reason I don't like doing it is because I think I overthink it way too much when I'm trying to do multi entries.
100%, and like it's tough to. I'll tell you right now, it's tough to do. It's tough to crunch lineups and prioritize 20. It's not that difficult to crunch lineups and find 150 that you're okay. I'm kind of like spread out how I want to be, but like you tell me pick your best 20 lineups and I just made 500 or I made 150. That's tough. That is tough.
I will tell you. So tomorrow, when it'll probably either be tonight or tomorrow morning when I start kind of building out all my lineups. What I will do is I will do what I call is my version of a dummy crunch. And my dummy crunch is I don't put anything in. The only thing I put in there is 2 unique fighters per lineup and 20% randomness. And then I will ask it to spit out 1,000 lineups. And then that's how I start my process. I don't know how everyone else starts their process. That's how I start my process and how I kind of start dwindling things down.
Yeah. I don't hate it at all. I mean, you have to try to figure out what the field's going to be at.
Yeah. And like, I want to see I want to start seeing what are popular combination. What are the 2 and 3 fighters that are coming up in a majority of my lineups? And then also, of course, comparison, what we're seeing with ownership projections. Of course, if you check the show notes, the show description here on YouTube, we got some great offers over there. It's a great way to show your support for the channel. Help us keep continuing to grow this channel. But that's how I do things. And everyone's going to have their own way of how they develop their rosters. But for me, that is something that I do.
Yeah, it's a great process. Thank you, Sam, for the super chat. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Always happy to answer your questions. And if you guys could help us get over 100 likes. The channel's taken off. We're doing well. We appreciate it. The Discord channel is taking off as well. We're trying to still shoot for over 1,000 subscribers. It's not definite, Jason, but I actually might be available for this weekend, and I might just throw on my Twitch and possibly do like a watch along. I might do a watch along. Jason and I have always talked about doing it together, but I might be able to do that towards maybe the main card. We'll see how the family time's going and everything. But if you guys are interested, you could always tune into the Discord channel and join my Twitch at PTE MMA.
Let's get some questions here from Discord. Up first, value plays earn 8K on DraftKings and Core 3 on DraftKings. I think when you look at value underneath 8K, it's got to start Drew Dober, right?
Yeah, it has to. Given what I think is going to happen for that fight, it's got to start Drew Dober.
Belbita, you got to look at her potentially. Puncher's chance and Pete Rodriguez.
And I say Jamal Pokes, dude. I know you hate it, but it is heavyweight, and you know how heavyweight.
I completely understand where you're coming from. I mean, first off, I might have a heart attack because you're back in a syndicate MMA fighter. I mean, first off, if I croak tomorrow, I'll blame Pete because it's Pete's fault because he's back in a syndicate MMA fighter. That
is true, but you want to know why I'm backing him, and I hate that gym so much. He's training with somebody who I actually think can help him out a lot in this. And it's Carl Williams. Carl Williams is a guy that has a ton of takedowns. And you're seeing a lot of these guys that reside in Vegas. They don't even necessarily say that they're a part of gyms anymore. They're just at the PI. And they're at the PI sparring all the time. And Jamal Pogues and Carl Williams. Carl Williams shoots like 15 takedowns a fight. Yeah. So get him in. Get these rounds in. Prepare for this Peterson guy and defend, sprawl and brawl, baby.
In terms of core plays for me, I think for me it starts with Gorimbo would be my number one core play. And then after that, I think it's probably Renato Moicano would be number 2 for me just because of the price point, but I also understand the volatility that's in that matchup. And then if I was going to look at a third, I think it may be Azat just because of the takedown potential there.
I'm a little bit lighter to him than I think than you're going to be. I understand the crazy takedown potential. Hear me out though, right? Like Azat Maksum, he had 2 takedowns in the previous fight with no control time. his output was shit. He scored 59 fantasy points, priced at 9,600. Dude, let's say he gets 6 takedowns, but Charles Johnson keeps getting back up. I just don't necessarily know. I don't know. Some guys are really control oriented, and I don't necessarily see that. I probably like the fighter who's $100 less in Aliaskhab Khizriev just a little bit more personally, but there's an argument for both.
Look, I mean, you look at two guys that were really able to take Charles Johnson down. Both guys who are definitely number one grapplers. Muhammad Kiev took him down 12 times in 3 rounds. Cody Durden took him down 11 times. Ode Osborne took him down 3 times. And then Rafael in his last fight took him down 3 times as well. I mean, look, to me, it's just that takedown upside in terms of there. We just kind of mentioned core plays. Favorite inside the distance fights. I would say Gorimbo Rodriguez would be number 1 for me.
Yep. Co-main event.
Yeah, I mean, you might have to look at that first fight of the night too.
Oh, we've convinced them.
Look, I just don't feel good about it. I just don't feel good about it.
You gotta feel good about it. Just put them in your lineup and close your eyes.
Make it 8,200, 8,000. I feel much more better myself. Like, I just feel like I would sit there and say, I would rather spend up $100, $200 more to get somebody else than take Thomas Peterson.
Yeah, that's why you got to go with Pokes. You're just proving my point.
But I would rather. There's other 7,000 options I would take chances on too that might make me feel a little bit better. Favorite underdogs. I mentioned about Belbita. She's one that somewhat. I think Roman Dolidze as an underdog is not a bad play either.
No, it's not a bad play. It's just that fight, right? Like, if Dolidze wins the decision, he's much more likely to be optimal than if Imavov wins the decision, clearly, given the price discount. It's just a fight I don't have a great read on. And I'm okay with saying that. And I think that he will be the bull at times, and Imavov will be the matador. But if they get in the clinch, I do think that Dolidze is much stronger. I do. Who has the better cardio? I think it's a slight lean towards Imavov, but it's just not a great fight for me. But, man, I've been wrong in almost every single Roman Dolidze fight, and I'm no problem telling you guys when I'm right or when I'm wrong.
Yeah. In terms of favorite parlay plays of the week, I would probably be looking at teaming up someone like Gorimbo, Maksum. I'm trying to find someone who has some decent odds. I mean, that's a problem. I mean, and maybe Imavov that might.
Natalie Silva's a massive play, but like she's almost unplayable everywhere, right?
I think that's prop hunting. I think if you want to look at Natalie Silva, I think you have to be going prop hunting. Just taking that huge minus 370. It's a big number.
I've done worse, but I mean, like she's most likely winning decision. So
yeah,
I'd probably just take her to win via decision.
Samuel's Road to the Mansion, 7.5.
I'll say less.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad number. I think it's somewhere in that 6 to 8 range, most likely. It's what, 13 fights?
Yeah, I think it's 7 finishes. That's a lot, man. We tend to kind of overweight finishes, but
yeah, it's a lot that's in there. Get some questions that have come in over here on YouTube, and then we'll wrap this show up here. Samuel says, I'm telling first fight is going to determine DFS overall winnings. Sam, I hope the hell you're wrong. I hope you're wrong. Because if that's the case, it may not be a good night for me. But I have not. I was just trying to get in a fancy country. Couldn't get into it. So yeah. Let's see here. Ryan says top 3 MVP options over on FanDuel. So I mean, look, I like Gorimbo, but man, he's gonna have big ownership. To me, it's getting away from a couple of fighters in this one, getting away from Gorimbo, getting away from Renato Moicano, and then Gilbert Urbina. I think anywhere else you go there. So like if I was gonna label 3 of them out there, to me it'd be Gorimbo. I think Azat, because he could rake up some points. And maybe Randy Brown's a sneaky MVP tomorrow.
Told you, bro. And Randy Brown. I love me some Randy Brown.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when it comes to MVPs, you can get a little bit bullish with it, especially if you have a.
I mean, I know we've kind of talked about some of these prize pools over at FanDuel, but I just think it really comes down to and this is even if you're playing the captain contest on DraftKings, if you're getting those multi entries, I think the way I play those contests, Pete, is it's primarily based on how many entries am I putting in. If I'm only putting in a single bullet or 5 or 10 entries, I get way more crazy with how I put my lineups in.
Yeah, for sure. And you're hitting the nail right on its head. It's like you have to determine what's the likelihood of you winning with X amount of lineups. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I've just done single bullets and I've taken down a Jeep. Like my best win, I think it was the only lineup I put in was a single bullet, and I took third in an NBA contest and won a lot of money. So it's like sometimes you just get the right bounces in some of these close fights, and that's all we need.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have found myself playing more captain contests on DraftKings.
Mm-hmm.
Just say, hey, I'll take that 10K. I mean, I'll take 10K. I mean, yeah, I'd love to win 100K, no doubt about it. Who doesn't want to win 100K? 100K can solve a lot of problems real quick.
It sure could. I'm waiting to get a big one. Like I feel like we've been playing this game for so long. It's getting difficult. It really is. But I mean, I still think that the IQ edge and just knowing the game more, like we actually know the fight game. Sometimes it can be a hindrance and it also can help. But I definitely think that we're due. We're all due here with this channel.
And I would say this, and of course we've got our DraftKings contest, and the way I play our Fight HQ contest, I play that with more of a cash mindset than a GPP mindset.
Yeah, you're smart because we all play like GPP, and then you end up freaking winning.
Yeah, that was the next morning I woke up and go, oh.
Yeah.
You get that? Exactly. You get that notification from DraftKings. You have been credited.
Yeah, right. It's not. Yeah, I mean, you've been killing it, and everybody else that's been a part of the community killing it as well. You see me at the bottom all the damn time.
Yeah, so I'm interested, and look, this was a totally listener suggested thing of keeping track, and maybe we'll have to come up with some kind of cool prize at the end of the year for whoever. Maybe we do something for top 3 prizes. Probably maybe come up with something cool to give away here. But it's interesting to see because it's one of those things where I feel like if you're in that if you average around 400 points every week, you're going to be at the top. I think.
Yeah, I mean some weeks some people have the optimals in our contest. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I hope you guys are putting those lineups in other contests because you guys are sharp at times.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But, of course, as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in. Of course, if you're not on our Score channel, totally free to join. Great conversation we have in there. As I mentioned, we got that DraftKings contest. All the links are below as well. Also, we got some offers for you can take advantage of as well. So, as always, we appreciate that. We appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Anything, Pete, you want to leave us with?
No, just want to say thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Just hit that like button before you head out. Recommend the channel to other people that you know. Help us get those subscribers up, and we appreciate you guys and talk to you guys in their Discord.
And that, of course, that's going to wrap it up for us. Of course, you can also check us out on the podcasting platforms as well, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, if you prefer to take in the show on the audio side of the equation. And we will be back next week. We've got another Fight Night card coming up next week before we get into UFC 298.